Welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast.
To me, being perfect is not about that scoreboard out there.
This is a chance of a lifetime.
When you can understand the person, you can then work towards a common goal.
We are all on the same team.
Know your role and do it to the best of your ability.
Focus on the fundamentals. We've gone over time and time again.
Your defense has got to be better.
Leave no doubt tonight.
Great moments are born from great opportunity.
Hello and welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast. My name is Paul Barnett, and here on the podcast, we believe that there is no algorithm for leadership. And so we interview great sports coaches from around the world to try and find ideas to help us all be better leaders. Our great coach on this episode is Nell Fortner. Nell is a former basketball player and now coach. As a player, she went to the University of Texas and led them to the #1 national ranking, as well as representing the USA. As a coach, she has over 40 years of experience at high school, college, pro and international level. She's also led the USA national team to gold medals at the 1998 FIBA World Championship and the 2000 Olympic Games. She was also named the 2000 USA Basketball Coach of the Year. She is presently the head coach of Georgia Tech. And just before we go to the interview, today's podcast is brought to you by the Macquarie University Business School's MBA program. Designed to empower, challenge and transform, the Macquarie MBA gives you the business skills and knowledge you need to succeed in an evolving global economy. The program bridges the gap between theory and real-world application, bringing together world-leading professors, executives and industry partners to teach you how business can be used for good. I have just started working with the team at Macquarie on some projects and can attest to the quality of the people and material. To find out more, search for Macquarie University Business School's MBA. And now please enjoy our interview with Nell Fortner.
You're listening to the Great Coaches Podcast.
Nell Fortner, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast.
Thank you, Paul. I'm happy to be here.
Now, something really easy to get us going. Can you tell us where you are in the world and what you've been up to so far today?
Yeah, absolutely. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and I am the head women's basketball coach at Georgia Tech, which is in the ACC conference here, the Atlantic Coast Conference. And I'm going into my 5th season here at Georgia Tech. Now, I've coached for a long, long time, but right here, I'm heading into my 5th season here.
We're going to get into the long arc of your career. And it comes to Sydney at one point, which we'll talk about as well. But Nell, could I start by name dropping? There's a few great coaches I found that you've had connection with while I was preparing for today. Jodie Conrad, Gary Blair, Lynn Dunn, and of course, Leon Barmore.
Yeah.
And we were talking about Pat Summitt, and I'm sure there's many, many others. But I wanted to ask Nell, you've seen some great ones up close. What do you think the great ones do differently that separates them from the rest?
Yeah, that's a great question because every one of them are different in certain ways, but then yet they're all the same in one way, and that is they're highly competitive. They want to win. They're not doing this just to, just for the fun of it. Although it is fun. I think that every one of them would say they have fun and enjoy it, but they're highly competitive. They're very detail oriented. They want things when they know what they want to see on the court. They're demanding in that regard and hold kids accountable. So I think that those are things that can bring you success, even if you don't have the highest talented kids. But being consistent in those behaviors, I think they all have in common.
Now, could I pick up on competitiveness for a minute? Because I asked this question, the context is I'm a father of 2 daughters. When the young women that you coach come to Georgia Tech, Do you have to spend time normalizing competition, or do people come jam-packed ready to compete?
Well, kids are different. They are all a bit different, and they bring a little bit of different spice to the team. Some you have to push a little harder, or some you have to, or some you wish they were a little bit more competitive. They might just enjoy being, playing hard or whatever. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty of having to win a game, sometimes you have to really help them understand what that looks like and feels like, and how the consistent work every day has to happen in order to get the win. I'm a very competitive person, and sometimes I might get it out of whack a little bit as far as how I try to get my point across. But at the end of the day, you want to win. This is what we do. We compete. You want to win everything you do. So sometimes it takes a little more time to get a team really dialed into, hey, this is really important. So, and holding them accountable to everything that needs to be done to win.
Now, you grew up in Mississippi, and then your family moved to Texas. Now, I know that this was a big turning point in your life. Could you tell us how it influenced you?
Yeah, it really was, because Paul, I'm on the older side. I'm not I'm a little bit older. So when I was coming up and growing up in Mississippi, we didn't have team sports in school. So I was playing basketball in my driveway. I was playing tennis. I was a competitive swimmer. But those were things that you did in the summertime at a club, it wasn't a competitive, you weren't in school playing these sports if you were a girl. Now, boys had everything, and then in 1972, Title IX came into effect in the USA, which made it mandatory for public schools to have sports for girls. Well, in Mississippi, it took them a while to enact that. But when I was in the 10th grade, we moved to Texas, and they had already enacted it in all their high schools. Well, I was in heaven, because now I'm playing volleyball, basketball, swimming, golf, tennis, track and field. I'm doing it all, because I was a pretty good athlete, and I loved doing everything. So it changed my life in regards to, now I'm a team sport athlete. I'm being coached by powerful women. I was fortunate to have two strong women coaches in high school, and they taught me, they helped nurture me into the athlete that I could be. And then I received a scholarship to go play at the University of Texas. And that was huge. I mean, they were just starting to do that. So to be able to go play volleyball and basketball on a scholarship for Jody Conrad. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, it's like the steps were just all falling into place after, we moved to Texas. So extremely fortunate for that move, and we'll be forever grateful for it.
So you went from this great experience as a player, Nell, and then you take up coaching. And there was 10 years as an assistant coach at college level before you got the job at Purdue.
Yeah.
What do you remember surprising you most when you first became a head coach?
I think the amount of really, I loved it from day one. I loved being a head coach, because I'm gonna go back for a minute, because before I got that head job at Purdue, I was fortunate enough to work with Tara Vanderveer, who was the '96 Olympic coach. I was one of her assistant coaches that trained that team for a full year. We traveled the world training that team to get ready for the '96 Olympics. You talk about a phenomenal experience. That was my entry into USA basketball. And I had never even been out of the country. We're flying off to Lithuania and going to Italy and going to Poland and, Czech Republic. And I'd never even been in a car longer than 6 hours, So, and to work with Tara, who I did not know, she hired me because through talking to coaching peers, they said, hey, you need to check out Nell. I think she'd be good for you. And it was great. I had a great time, but it also gave me the confidence that I knew I could be a head coach. I knew that I could be an Olympic coach if that's what was going to happen for me. That year gave me a tremendous amount of confidence. So when I went to Purdue, I was ready. I mean, I was more than ready. And so, and loved my experience at Purdue. It lasted for a year and we won big there. But then USA Basketball came back and said, "Hey, you want to be the Olympic coach?" I'm like, "What?" So, yeah, it was kind of a whirlwind, but it was an awesome whirlwind.
So that whirlwind takes you to Sydney. And as I said to you off air, I was in the audience that day. My wife and I went to everything that was on during those Olympics, and I watched your team play, and there was a young Dawn Staley in that team. And I remember a lady called Katie Smith. And of course, that team won the gold medal.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even a close game. But what I want to ask you was, when you were coaching Team USA, it was your dream. You always said it. It was your dream to coach that team. And you reached that dream at such a young age. And I'm wondering what happened afterwards. How did you realign and create a new dream to propel you forward?
Yeah, that's a really good question because, when you're that young, there's still so much that you need to learn. You still have a lot of coaching growth to do. You still have a lot of just experiences that you need to experience to become a seasoned coach. So I had the experience with the Olympic team and it was phenomenal. And I was so fortunate to have it, but that was where I cut my teeth. I mean, let's face it. But cut my teeth with a bunch of players who were highly motivated to win everything they did, whether it was basketball or, chili wings. They were really competitive card players. Everything was a competition and it was every day. So I cut my teeth on that. And it was a really cool thing to do with a bunch of players that weren't that much younger than me. But it was, the one goal was we were all highly competitive and we all wanted that gold medal. And there was, nothing that was going to stop us. The tough thing, Paul, was that the pressure that I felt for being the head coach, because the Olympics were in Sydney. They were the second best team in the world. We're going to go play on their home court to win a gold medal. That was a lot of pressure for me. But I had a very experienced group of players who wanted nothing more than to continue winning gold medals. So they were willing to sacrifice playing time, whatever the sacrifice was, they wanted that gold medal. So I learned really, really early in my career, when you can really show the goal, when the goal becomes the thing, focusing a team becomes much easier. So that is a challenge for me now as a head coach. Is the goal important to everyone from top to bottom? So everybody's putting their best foot forward every day. That's a real challenge for coaches today, for sure. I know I was kind of all over the place with that answer, but it was, yeah. So anyway, winning the gold medal, phenomenal. On Australia's home court, double it by 100,000.
I can understand that, Nell. And you talked about the competitive nature of some of the great coaches earlier on. And I think that this example of focusing a competitive group with a gold medal is probably would have been something that would have been quite fascinating to see unfold. But I'd like to ask the question again if I could, because I am curious. You were you said, I think you were 40 years old in 2000. It's very young to achieve your dream job.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what you did afterwards. To sort of realign yourself and establish new goals and a new pathway for yourself.
Yeah. Before we went to Australia, I had been, because I knew once the Olympic job was over, I was going to have to get a job. And so the Indiana Fever were a new expansion team in the WNBA. I had coached at Purdue, which was an hour up the road from Indianapolis. And so they hired me to be their coach. And so I had that job waiting for me when the Olympics were over. And that was a lot of security for me. And I thought that that was the perfect time to go coach the pros, because I was just been coaching pros for 3 years on this Olympic team. But, you know, Paul, it wasn't for me. Coaching the Olympic team with highly competitive athletes that were very laser focused on what we were doing was different than coaching the pros, who were not as laser focused and were not as, you know, that was not as enjoyable for me. And I don't think it was the best job for me and what I brought to the table as a coach. I understand the game. I can coach the game. I know it on both ends of the floor. But I think one of my strengths that was really carried over for the Olympic team was I'm personable. I have energy. I'm enthusiastic. I'm going to make you feel good about yourself. I'm going to coach you, but I want to build you up. I want you to be highly confident. And the pros aren't always like that. They don't really want that relationship with a coach. They don't want you really knowing their business. And so after 3 years at Indiana, it wasn't for me. And now I'm having to readjust. Now I'm having to go, okay, let me get back to my comfort zone. And that's college, because you can really make a difference in a kid's life in college, not just as a player, but as a person. So readjusting for me came after I tried the pros, coaching the Indiana Fever. And I felt so much more comfortable when I got back into the college world at Auburn, which is in Auburn, Alabama. And then I felt like I was back at home, you know, in my profession.
Could I pick up on this idea of positivity? You talk about it a lot in your interviews. You describe yourself as an encourager.
Yeah.
And I wanted to sort of look at it from another angle, if I could, Nell. And I wanted to ask you what you've learned about being perhaps too positive and perhaps not becoming a cheerleader and perhaps not challenging people enough.
Yeah, it's, you know, I have had to sit with that at times and make sure I wasn't too much, because that can be looked at as soft. Oh, she's soft. She doesn't get on them enough or whatever. But I don't think it's ever been a problem for me, but I do have to at times reel that back in and get a little tougher, a little more. And it might be, even when I say tougher, it could be more of just making sure you're consistent with holding kids accountable, making sure you're consistent with getting the things done that have to be done at the level they have to be done at. So at times I do have to check myself, you know, and make sure that because it's not fair to the kid if I'm not holding them accountable and making them do things at the level they're supposed to. It's not good for them. So, but I think I understand that it hasn't been something that's been a problem. I've just had to recognize it and just kind of check myself and get back to where I needed to go.
Nell, there'll be a lot of people listening who are in the same place. I mean, whether it's, you know, times are tough, we've just got out of the pandemic, and there's this quandary. You know, do you push and challenge people, or do you sort of create more of a softer environment for them? So I think it's a very, very topical question for all of us. You said that you check yourself. Is there any routines you use, any small things or processes you go through to do that?
No, you know, not really. I can answer that pretty quickly. No, but there is self-talk, you know, like whether it's when I'm planning practice or whether I'm watching film and I know I'm going to have to sit down and watch that film with the team, and how am I going to say this? How do I want to present this and get this message across? Because it's so important. You know, one of the things that I've learned is whatever you say first. Like if I'm going to sit down and watch film with a kid or with a team, whatever I present first is the thing that's going to stick the longest. If you have a 45-minute film session, the thing you're going to cover at the end, they're not going to remember. The things you cover at the beginning, they tend to remember, sticks longer. And so I learned that when it comes to when I need to send a message, whether it's the intensity we have to pick up, whether it's really making sure that I'm holding a kid accountable to something. I mean, you have to. That's the hardest thing, Paul, is holding kids accountable, because it's tiring. It's, it's like over and over every day you're saying the same thing, but you have to do it. One day it's going to stick. So I think that's, I don't know. I hope I've answered the question. I probably went around the wheelhouse on that one, but I have to self-talk myself to make sure I'm saying the right things at the right time, the right way. And that might sound like a lot, but kids today are different. They ingest information different. They hear you different, because primarily they get so much of their information on their phone and on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. And so when they're listening to you and trying to make that eye contact with you and ingest it, you have to make sure they hear it, and you hold them accountable to your expectation of what you've just told them you're expecting.
Now, I've got this interesting quote from you. I'd like to read it before I ask the question. You say, "My coaching philosophy is bring your best attitude and your work ethic every day. You have control over both of those things." It's the first part of this sentence I wanted to ask you about, and it's this attitudes area.
Yeah.
When people's attitude isn't what you or the team expect, and in fact, you talked a little bit about that when comparing college and the pros, when that attitude's not there, what advice do you have for other leaders on working with people to alter it?
I'm going to be really honest with you. That's a hard one. When you get a kid that has, and I'm just going to say a bad attitude, one that is defensive, one that is jealous, one that is has maybe a little bully in it. If somebody's better than them, so they want to bully them. It is bad. It's disruptive. It's very disruptive. And it's very hard to change a kid that has an attitude that is like that. You can talk to them about it. You can point things out about it. You can hold them accountable to certain things you want them to do on the floor in a certain way. It's very hard to change a kid's attitude. And a bad attitude can really damage and ruin a team. It's like that old adage, one bad apple, spoils a whole bunch. And it's very true. And it's happened to me in my career. And it's a really uncomfortable, not fun thing to deal with, but you have to deal with it. And however, you got to figure it out. They either have to go or they've got to change, or you have to try to manage it. And it's extremely hard to manage because they are going to affect other players on your team. So that's a tough one, Paul. That is. But I've gotten to the point where I'll try to manage it. And when it doesn't work, they got to go. I'm not going to sacrifice my team for that. And that's a tough one. It's really hard. So you try not to make the mistake of getting people on your team like that, but sometimes you get fooled and they get there and then you have to deal with it.
So now Indiana to Auburn. And when you stopped at Auburn, when you stopped coaching, you said you were tired and you needed a break. So you took up a role as an analyst with ESPN. And I know you got to watch hundreds and hundreds of games, which have gone on to help you in your return to coaching. But what I wanted to ask you was, based on your experience through that Auburn change, what do you do differently now to ensure that you maintain and renew your energy?
Ever since I've always wanted to coach because of the kids, the players. From day one, from when I was an athlete and the coaches that were coaching me, I was like, I want to be like them. I want to be like Jody. I want to be like, my coaches who coached me. I loved it. I loved the whole atmosphere. I loved everything about it. I loved being a player. I loved watching my coaches coach, learning from them. And then when I got to coach, I was like, this is phenomenal. The energy about it, everything about the competition, the practice, I loved everything about it. So I don't have to do anything, Paul. I wake up in the morning and I love what I do. I'm happy I'm still coaching, and I feel so fortunate. I mean, I have a bunch of great kids. I love my staff. They're phenomenal. So it's just a fun atmosphere to be in. And it's been the way I've just grown up my whole life. Sports has been incredibly important. It brings me joy. And I just want now, as a coach, I just want to bring joy to other kids and help them be great. I want them all to be great and accomplish all their dreams. That makes me happy.
Well, can I ask you about that then? I mean, you consistently describe yourself as a people person. You clearly love your job. I can see in the background so many trophies and old basketballs and obviously souvenirs from your many travels. But as you've gone on and you've matured and you've got better as a coach and more experienced as a leader, what have you learned about that space between you and the people you lead?
Well, I just know this, Paul. I'm going to be me every day. I'm going to be me. And however I can help someone, I'm going to try to do that by just being me. We can choose to be happy. We can choose to be sad. We can choose to be mad. We can choose a good attitude, a bad attitude. We can choose to be helpful, encouraging, or we can be not a very nice person. I've just been fortunate that I've always wanted to be happy, and I wanted for people to do well, and I want to help them do that. So there is the space between me and anybody else. I'm going to cover. There is no space, because if you're in my space, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel it. If you're in my space, you're going to feel me there. And that's the only way I know how to do it. So, I'm going to get up in the morning for 6 a.m. practice, and I'm going to walk in that gym just like I do every day. I'm going to have that energy because they're going to be they're going to be tired and whatever, but nope, boom, let's go. And so that's the only way I know how to do it. There's tons of better coaches than me. There's X's and O's and there's tons of better coaches than me. But I don't know if there's a better coach than me when it comes to energy and giving and doing, it just is what it is. You bring what you've got. And I think I bring that pretty good.
Definitely. You definitely do, Nell. I'm feeling it today on this interview. Can I take you now to March 2021? I think you know what I'm going to ask you about, and it's the photo of the weights room at the NCAA tournament that went viral. I remember seeing this in my feed, actually. So we're 2 years on. Well, actually, firstly, if you could tell us about that photo. But then the question is, we're 2 years on now, and are we seeing the change that you expect when it comes to women's sports being considered a forethought, not an afterthought?
Yeah, nothing changes fast when it comes to trying to get equality. You fight the good fight to try to get equality. It was the lack of equality between the men's NCAA tournament and the women's NCAA tournament was just, laid out bare during 2021. But it had been that way from day one. No one knew it to the extent when it came to the NCAA tournament until COVID bared its soul, because it had to. We were all in one place, and it was shocking, really, to the level of I don't know of inequality when it came to those two tournaments. So when Sedona Prince, the player from Oregon, took the picture of the weight room and was really just kind of joking about it, like, look, this is what we've got. And the guys have sent us their picture of their weight room, and it just blew up. I don't think anybody knew that was going to hit like it hit, nobody knew that that was even happening. And we never would have known had it not been from COVID. Think about that. We would have never known that the guys got all this stuff in their tournament and we got this. We would have never known that. So now, did it just change instantly? No. We still have a long way to go when it comes to equality between men and women's athletics, period. We're still battling for equality at the collegiate level. And I'm sure we'll continue to battle it for years and years more. Things can't always be equal, but they can be fair. And I think that is what we battle for on a daily basis. Is we at least want it to be fair. We don't, we might not have the budgets that the men have, or because on the whole, men's football brings in a lot of money. Men's basketball has the potential to bring in a lot of money at the collegiate level. Women's basketball just isn't there yet. Maybe UConn does. Maybe Stanford, not Stanford, I don't know, Oregon, or, a school that might draw Iowa now with Caitlin Clark, LSU now that, they're bringing in more money, but you at least want to be treated fairly and have the gym space, have the travel opportunities, have the hotel and we do. Is it everything the men have? No. Is it the same budget? No. But it at least has given us a platform to continue to build on, to make sure that we are continuing to rise to make it equal. But we're not there yet. We're not.
Nell, if I could take you back and introduce you to that young girl who wanted to be a vet, knowing what you know now, what would you say to her?
I think the most important thing we can give our young people, or to that young person is that we believe in them. Go and do what you want to do. What makes you happy? What is your passion? And being a vet was my passion for a long time, until I moved to Texas and was put into a situation where I could play those team sports and to be around strong women coaching me. All of a sudden, being a vet, no, I'm just going to have a bunch of dogs and cats, but I'm going to be a coach. I'm not going to be a vet, because it was no longer my passion, because I didn't have team sports when I wanted to be a vet. I didn't have that other opportunity. But when I got that other opportunity, that was it. I knew that's exactly what I wanted to be. So I would just make sure for any young person that you follow your passion. You go do what makes you happy. And parents will go, oh, you're not going to make enough money. You're going to make plenty of money if you're doing exactly what you want to do. If you're happy doing it and it drives you every day and you wake up excited about it, you're going to be fulfilled. So that would be my advice to that young person that I was.
Now, you play the guitar and the piano. I know music's an important part of your life. Is there a piece of music that tells us a little bit more about who you are away from the court?
I don't think there's a certain piece of music. I like all genres of music, and I enjoy playing music on my guitar and piano. I play by ear, so I don't read music. So I write my own music. So I don't perform for anybody. It's just it's like there. No,
that was my next question.
Yeah, I'm not going to get up and go get my guitar. No, but it's a form of therapy for me, because I like being able to hear. I can hear things in my head, and to be able to put it to music is so exciting. It's so much fun. So, I mean, really, if I hadn't gotten into sports, honestly, Paul, I'd be a rock and roll star. That's what I would have done. I would have gone that route. I would have been an entertainer, I think.
One of your early mentors was Karen Chisholm, and I know that these days you're a mentor as well. I'm wondering what you've learned about a good mentor-mentee relationship.
Yeah. Karen was a great mentor for me. She she was the ideal coach for me because she is also one that has the energy and the passion and the love for what she does, and just was a phenomenal teacher. She taught me the sport of volleyball. I didn't know anything about volleyball when I started playing it. She taught me, and I picked it up really fast. And she was a great encourager, but she was tough. And that's when I fell in love with coaching, because she was fun. She had the energy. She was fun, but she was tough. Like I couldn't get away with anything, like she was tough, and we were successful. And so that was my first look into a strong, encouraging, fun, strong woman. And I was like, man. And then when I met Jody, and then I'm like, okay, this is exactly what I want to do. And I knew that there was no doubt in my mind. Yeah.
It's getting late there, Nell. So perhaps just one final question, if I could. And when you were asked about the legacy you want to leave as a coach, you said you want to be a difference maker in this profession on a really high level and in a really positive way. So to finish with, I'd like to ask you if you could tell us a little bit more about how you hope the difference is described by the people that you've led.
Like, I'll give you an example. Like there's a player in the WNBA. Her name is Dewana Bonner. She plays for the Connecticut Sun now. She's had a long career. I recruited her to Auburn, coached her at Auburn. 6'4", as skinny as my finger. Just nobody thought she would be as successful as she's been, because she's durable. She works hard. She's competitive, and just had a great career at Auburn, and is still in the WNBA and still just playing so well. She's had twins. She still looks great. I mean, it's just like, she's just so strong. But whenever I see her, or whenever I talk to her and she tells me things about what I did for her, or how I helped her through this, or that's it. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, and there's many more like her. When you get players who come back, or they hit you with a text, or they call you or whatever, and say thank you for this, or helping me through that, or making me stronger in this area. That's what it's, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. I mean, because now you've helped someone go on and be great themselves. And it doesn't matter to me if they're a housewife, a doctor, working at a store. I don't care. If they're happy and they're living a good life, then that makes me happy. That's what I mean by a high level. That's what I mean.
I think happiness and living it at a high level is a pretty good place to finish. So, Nell, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you staying up for this interview. I know that the season's about to get underway, and I wish you all the best for the year ahead.
Thank you very much, Paul. I enjoyed it. You have a great rest of your day.
Hi, everyone. It's Paul here, and you have been listening to the great coach, Nell Fortner. I hope you got a lot out of Nell's down-to-earth style. I loved her accent as well, and I hope you found a few ideas that you can bring to your own dinner table, locker room, or work table for discussion. When I listen back, some of the highlights for me were the way she's been able to find the line between positivity and accountability. Her belief that the thing you say first when giving people feedback is often the thing that stays with them the longest. And also when she said that there are tons of greater coaches than her when it comes to technical knowledge, but none better when it comes to giving energy. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And just before we go, if you have any feedback, then please let us know. Just like Mark Zimmerman, who said, "The Great Coaches Podcast, I love this. It's a great way for the journey to evolve and for us as listeners to grow from the lessons we learn from the coaches." Great stuff. We love the interaction with the people around the world who listen. And so if you have any feedback or comments, please let us know. And of course, if they're positive ones, then please let a friend or two know as well. All the details on how to connect with us are in the show notes or on our website, thegreatcoachespodcast.com.